Very good morning to all of you. It's my immense pleasure to welcome you all for this seminar on interpersonal skills and interview skills. So we are privileged to have with us the guest, one from the corporate and the other from the academia. I am very much privileged to welcome Mr. Mudit Bhatnagar and Mrs. Archana. Mudit Bhatnagar from the corporate side and Mrs. Archana from the academia side. So we are going to have their discussions on the interpersonal skills and interview skills in the coming moments. So to start with, what is this interpersonal skills talks about? Interpersonal skills are the life skills we use every day to communicate and interact with other people, both individually and in groups. People who have worked on developing strong interpersonal skills are usually more successful in both their professional and personal lives. Employers often seek to hire staff with strong interpersonal skills. They want people who work well in a team and are able to communicate effectively with colleagues, customers and clients. People with good interpersonal skill are usually perceived as optimistic, calm, confident and charismatic. The qualities that are often appealing to others. Through awareness of how you interact with others and with practice, you can improve your interpersonal skill. I hope today's discussions will be useful and rewarding and which will be enlightening us about these two skills. Let me highlight what are the interpersonal skills we will be having in discussions today. Verbal communication, what we see, how we say it. Non-verbal communication, what we communicate without words, body language. Listening skills, how we interpret both verbal and non-verbal messages sent by others. Negotiation, working with others to find a mutual agreeable outcome. Problem solving, working with others to identify, define and solve problem. Decision making, the fundamental purpose of a manager. Exploring and analyzing options to make sound decisions. Assertiveness, communicating our values, ideas, beliefs, opinion, needs and wants freely. So we will have all discussions today highlighting with examples from the corporate and academia side. So let us have the discussion to start. So let me invite Mr. Mudit Bhatnagar. Mudit Bhatnagar heads the marketing division of It's Cash Card that stormed the paradigm of electronic payment solution in India. He is the helm of 3 key solutions in India of 3 verticals: marketing, CRM and communication of the multi-purpose payment solutions. He has a total of 15 years of rich experience and has been previously associated with esteemed companies like DHFL, HDFC Bank Limited, Shoppers Stop, holding prime key positions over there. He is a driving force behind the company's brand architecture, persona and the brand promise across multiple touchpoints. He also looks after enabling a seamless communication strategy across multiple markets, deploying effective multimedia tools for effective return on investment for various products and segments. Over these years, he has won numerous awards for his companies like Marketer of the Year, Brand of the Year, Indra Super Achiever Award and more. It adds a lot of sequence of awards and winning strategies he has developed and intervened in its company strategies. He has completed his graduation in commerce from Lucknow University, followed by postgraduate diploma in business management marketing from Mumbai. So it is wonderful to have you sir here. So let me have the discussion of Mr. Mudit Bhatnagar.
Good morning ladies and gentlemen. Thank you Dr. Manoranjan for inviting me over here, and thank you for the kind words of all the flowery words used in my introduction. I don't know whether I deserve any one of them or not. However, my corporate communications teams has done a fair bit of job of introducing me quite well at least. Interpersonal communication skills, as we speak about it, I think very often spoken about topic. What it means to us, what it means to you, what it means to me, what it means to the audience. I think we will spend the next 7-8 minutes discussing what it really means. Most of us are on social media platform, and Facebook being the most often used platform, and We follow many celebrities, we follow many people, we follow many pages, we like many pages. And I'm also no different than each one of you. I'm also a big social media fan and I'm active on each of the platforms. On Facebook, I read one quote which said, 10% of the problems which arise between an individual or between two individuals is basis the bone of contention or is basis the difference of opinion. 90% of the problems arise the way it is communicated. So essentially what I'm trying to say is that if there's an issue and if it is put in the right perspective between two individuals, the message gets clearer and the message is received in a much better manner. There's a difference between saying, hey, you know what, you did a good job today, and there's a difference between saying, you did an okay job today. While what I'm trying to communicate is that, okay, hey, you've done a good job, but if you look at the two different tones that I've spoken to you just now, the message gets distorted in between. So, interpersonal communication skills, essentially, very, very varied topic. There are books and books written on it. I'm sure you will be having many experts coming and speaking on this. I'm no expert, I can just speak from my experiences in the corporate world and otherwise as well. What are the two key elements of having an interpersonal communication? Any answers? Any guesses? Okay, so let me answer it on your behalf. Two key elements is that it has to be between two individuals or a group of individuals or between two groups. And two groups who are at least acquainted between the two of them. Interpersonal communication can never be between two strangers because once you've communicated, you are no longer strangers. You are acquaintances with each other. So, if you ask me, the elements, I think every textbook, if you go on to Google and say interpersonal communication skills, elements of interpersonal communication skills, the 5 things which come out very clearly are the sender, the receiver, the message, the feedback, and what are the barriers. 5 key elements of interpersonal communication skills. So, effectively what I'm trying to put forward is that there has to be a sender and there has to be a receiver. If one of them is missing, then it is a monologue and not a dialogue. Then it can never be an effective communication. It is always you talking to you kind of the receiver, you are the sender, and you are also the barrier, you are also deciphering the message. So effectively, in interpersonal communication, you need to have two individuals or two groups having a dialogue between the two of them. The message, very important. Now messages, I've read it in my management schools, I've read it in my organizational development days when I used to attend B school. Message could be verbal, message could be non-verbal, message could be through a body language, message could be a written message could be just at the look of my eye. But it is always important for the message to be there. So, if you all are movie buffs, all of us, the girls especially would say, oh, I love Shah Rukh Khan's eyes, they are so expressive. Shah Rukh Khan can emote anything just by his hands or just by the look on his face and all that. Is that interpersonal communication? I would be forced to say yes. Because if the lady love on the other side is also expressing through a smile or through a frown on her face, that means there is interpersonal communication happening. And that means she's got the message which Shah Rukh Khan has given. And she would automatically react to it. Now what happens when there's a barrier? When I say a barrier, Shah Rukh Khan smiling at a lovely lady, the lady is looking the other side. She's not got the message. Right? So, messages can be of any form. Just to make it a little bit more humorous, I could say, your eyes are so beautiful. I could text it to you, I could WhatsApp to you, I could ping it on a BlackBerry Messenger to you, I can even post it on a Facebook page, I can even write it to you. I can even just look into your eyes and just kind of blink a few eyelids and just move on. That's on the humorous side, okay. Nonetheless, feedback. What does feedback mean? During my retail selling days way back in 1998, 1999, 2000, we used to undergo a training program as to how to interact with walk-in customers. And the very first statement that we used to make was, "Good morning, sir. How can I help you?" Now, is there something wrong in the statement? There's nothing wrong in the statement. And often the customers used to respond saying that, "You can help me, but you may not." That was the first position. So we used to go back to our training team and say, "Hey, you know what? We get this response very often. What is the right way to kind of strike a conversation between a customer who perhaps needs some help?" So the trainer used to ask us, "How do you know he or she needs your help?" We would say, no, we just find him loitering around. He's just kind of browsing around. I think he or she needs help." We would say, "No, please understand, every human being will give out a message or a signal that he or she needs help in any kind of an environment. So when you're drowning, if you can't shout, you would raise your hand and say, 'Hey, you know what, I need help.' The lifeguard has to be active over there." Okay. So in a retail environment, they used to say, "Please look for his body movements. If he's browsing something and he looks around as if, he's trying, his eyes are looking for somebody. His eyes are looking for someone, okay, he wants to know something. That's the time to approach him or her and say, 'Hey, not how can I help you, but how may I help you?' Because he's already communicating with the environment over there using a non-verbal message. So the feedback he or she is expecting is that somebody would come up to him or her and say, 'Good morning, ma'am, good morning, sir. I reckon you need some help.' That's a feedback which comes. So that basically he sent out a message, you've received the message, and you've given a feedback. Now the barrier comes in between is that his body language says that he needs help, and you are not attentive. You are doing something else. Or you are attentive, but you chose not to be attentive. And the message gets, distorted. The message gets distorted. What it ends up doing is that the customer who needed your help to complete a purchase action does not do that. It means a dissatisfied customer and a sale lost, essentially. So basically barriers are the deterrents to the accuracy of the message, essentially. All of you would have heard of the term Chinese whispers. Yes, no? If not, let me tell you what Chinese whispers is all about. In a group of people, one person starts a conversation, whispers something into the ear of the second person. The second person, who is the receiver of the message, understands the message, whispers it again into the ear of the third person. The third person, who is then again the receiver of the message, understands and whispers it in the ear of the fourth person. The fourth person does it to the fifth, and so on and so forth. And finally, when we say, okay, what did you understand? Let me tell you that you will be amazed that you will have 25 different messages which are completely different than the original one which was said. So this is what happens, that how a communication moves around, how people understand it, and how they put it ahead. I've always been asked in my last 15 years of working and as being a faculty for being 12 years now, what does today's generation lack in terms of interpersonal skills? Or what are the key components to have a good or an effective interpersonal communication? I think more than the sending across the message, my first key criteria would be listening. There's a difference between I've heard it and I have listened to it. Because you can hear a lot of things, and our brain is such that we hear a lot of things, but we have selective listening. We listen to only those points that we are attuned to listen to, or which are pertinent to us. Human beings typically don't like conflict. We don't want to listen to things which perhaps don't give us a positive feedback, give us a positive vibe, does not kind of pertain to us, means that, oh, it is not meant for me, why should I listen to it? And this typically happens in a corporate boardroom. This typically happens in a corporate environment when you have a group of people trying to discuss some issues, discuss some solutions, and then you have various departments all spread across the board table, and you will see everybody listening to only to their functional things. So somewhere down the line, if listening can overcome that selective, as a good listener, you need to kind of move from just being selective listening to active listening. Because when you are in a corporate environment, as an active member of the organization, you are expected to know how your organization is shaping up, or how your organization is doing business, and how you can add value to it. Because if I just listen to, hey, I'm a marketing and communications guy, corporate communications guy, how does it matter to me whether sales are happening or not happening? But I need to spend on media. If I have not been attentive to what is going around, that sales are not happening, when sales are not happening, revenue is not happening, and how can you still end up spending so much of media monies? Right. So these are typical example that we need to imbibe in ourselves. Distraction is another key thing. And when I say distraction, I mean we get distracted on multiple things. Multiple things could be as simple as, oh, look at this, it's so lovely outside, the weather is, oh, the rains, we should have chai and pakoras. Whilst there is a very important discussion happening which could be detrimental to the growth of the individual, or the group of individuals, or the organization. Like I remember in my school days, my teacher used to tell me, hey Mudit, you're as attentive as, if I were to ask you, why didn't you do your homework, you would say the dogs are barking outside. So there is no effective interpersonal communication happening. I think distractions have to be minimized when you talk about interpersonal communication. Distractions as simple as that whilst I am lecturing you, or whilst I am speaking with you, some of you would be on a WhatsApp. Some of you would be browsing your phones. Some of you would be, looking at each other. This is what I mean by distraction. And these distractions have to be eliminated, because if you were to be present in a corporate environment or in a very formal environment, and you were attending a discussion, and if you are distracted by elements around you, and if you were to be asked a question and if you don't have answers, it gets very embarrassing. I always believe, do unto others as you want others to do unto you. So whilst in a corporate presentation, if one person is presenting and there is a communication happening. Now communication while there's a presentation going on is in form of written, it's verbal / oral, it's also non-verbal. Because please understand, while there is a text on the presentation, the presenter might be using a lot of body language. His body language or her body language also demonstrates what he or she is trying to communicate. But if we are not attentive to it, we are distracted by things around us, then there is no two-way communication happening. It is just a one-way communication, which is commonly known as a monologue, essentially. So distractions, and one has to show patience. Conflicting issues can be resolved if two people talk it out. When I say talk it out, I mean, I have an issue, I have this problem, and let's discuss it. By virtue of me being impatient, I may not even listen to the entire essence of the dialogue or the discussion and jump to my own conclusions, which may be detrimental to the result that is being envisaged. What it means is that two people getting into a room to talk it out, to resolve a conflict, the conflict will still persist if patience is not demonstrated by either one of them. And in case of being impatient, it always becomes my word against you. In Stephen Covey's, and I think if my memory serves me right, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, if that is the title of the book, there's a term called I am okay, you're not okay. What it means is that if I'm trying to communicate something to the other person who's the receiver of the message by saying, listen dude, this is what I mean, you don't understand it, please understand it, and please do it this way, which means that, hey, my word is the law, and what I'm saying is the final word, the other person will never ever effectively receive your message, and he will have a barrier to it which will block the feedback onto the message. So when we're talking to an if you're talking to an audience who's relatively inexperienced than you are, you have to go down to the level of that audience and speak to them in a language which they understand. If you are speaking to a group of people or an individual who happens to be far more experienced than you, then you have to, your pitch, your message has to be at that level to get into a dialogue. Otherwise, it will just, the communication chain breaks over there. So, to sum it up, in my opinion, if somebody was to ask me what are the key elements or what are the things which are very, very important in interpersonal communication, I would always say clarity of the message, what is expected post the dialogue, which is feedback. Try and minimize the barriers in it, be patient, do not give in to distractions, and please, please, please open your ears and more importantly your mind from hearing progress to listening. So that's all I had to put forward when it comes to interpersonal communication skills. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mudit Bhatnagar. You have made a wonderful discussions and wonderful view which was expressed. So now let us have Professor Archana from the academia side. Professor Archana is a highly experienced human resource professional with more than 15 years of experience in the industry. She has completed her post-graduation in personal management from Mumbai, and she is also a certified performance and competence developer. Professor Archana is associated as a faculty with various reputed institutes like Tilak Maharashtra Vidyapit, ISMT, IMS and Jaro Education. She is also a corporate trainer specializing in soft skills, communication skills and personality development program. With her wonderful experience into the academia and corporate academia exposure of training and other things, so we will going to have enlightened discussion of the various themes about interpersonal and the interviewing skill. With her knowledge and experience, Professor Archana has been an instrumental in designing and setting up the human resource department in various national and multinational companies. So I hope you all will be having wonderful discussions and viewpoints in this regard from the academic sector. So let me welcome Professor Archana to the stage. Please.
Hello people, we are going to talk about interpersonal skills today. How was that starting? Absolutely no eye contact with those who I am talking to. It doesn't happen. This is not interpersonal skills. When I say communications, what comes to our minds first? Speaking. But it's just speaking which is communication? No, it is speaking well which actually creates communication. Of course, Mr. Bhatnagar has covered a lot of points about communication, how a receiver, a sender and a message has to be there. Let's look at some more points about communication. No, about interpersonal communication. So as I said, speaking well is one element, one point where communication starts. And the next is making comfortable conversation. It's not just making a conversation with another person or your pet or your telephone or through any other media that you're using, but it's making comfortable conversation. Now when I'm talking about comfortable conversation, it's not only that you're comfortable with a language or with a particular topic that we are covering, but it's also about making the other person comfortable by speaking the language, by speaking the voice, or by speaking the topic that is interesting enough for the other person, and also being comfortable yourself, and only then effective communication will take place. After that, everything like interpersonal communication, interpersonal skills come in the picture. Most important is communication, conversation. Because communication can happen through telephone, can happen through WhatsApp, can happen through Facebook, very rightly said by Mr. Bhatnagar. However, to have a conversation, we definitely need many more skills than just speaking. Very rightly said by him again, listening well. It's only after listening you can comprehend the information, you can understand the information and react accordingly. Accordingly, correct to the situation, correct to the question asked, correct to the answer given to you. So reacting is very important, and for that, listening is one of the most important aspects that we all need to learn. Most of us need to really learn this skill called listening. A lot of times today, we are so busy with the gadgets that we are hardly looking at each other while we are speaking or while we are listening. And still, even after being so modern, we still say a lot of times to each other, look at me, I'm talking to you. Look at me, I'm trying to tell you something. Look at me. Why? Because eye contact is very, very important. This eye contact will let you react correctly. This eye contact will make you understand what the other person is trying to tell you. What is the empathy behind it? What is the emotion behind it? What is it that is being communicated? And in this, it's not only non-verbal communication, but there's something called para-verbal communication. The pitch that you're using to talk. The kind of a note that you're using of your voice to use, to speak, will communicate a lot more than just speaking well, than just the words that you're using. A lot of times, you may not know a particular language very clearly. You may not be an expert in a particular language. However, if you know exactly what you want to say, and if you have your eye contact, and if you have the conviction in what you're talking, will definitely reach the message that you have to reach to the receiver that we are talking about. The sender, receiver and the message, all three are involved. All three are connected. All three need to be present there. So if the sender is present and having an eye contact, so the receiver has to be present and have an eye contact so as to get the message, comprehend the message and understand it completely. Now, why is this interpersonal skill so much important in everyone's life? Whether you are working, whether you are a student, whether you are a father, mother, child or any relationship, interpersonal skills will definitely help you clarify a lot of doubts. Speaking, which is always said, speaking will clarify a lot of things. So if you communicate effectively, if you have your interpersonal skills in place, which include non-verbal, paraverbal, verbal, listening, everything, all the skills that we have said in our seminars, definitely you will be able to clarify doubts, which is very important. Whether you are a teacher, whether you are a student, whether you are an engineer, whether you are a doctor or any other, whether you are an executive, a manager, you will need to clarify a lot of doubts to yourself and to the other people. Then of course you will be able to communicate effectively. To communicate effectively, you need to understand, listen and of course speak very well. You will be able to reach out efficiently. As a working personality, as a working person, you will need to reach out with your message, with your idea. It's not only salespeople that need to sell their ideas. It's a lot of us, it's most of us need to convince other people about our ideas. Be it a corporate meeting, be it at home, about a new project that you want to do, about a new career that you want to select or anything else. You may need to convince, you may need to reach out your message very, very efficiently, very, very effectively. Only then will there be a discussion and a decision made. Then of course, as I said, repeating again, sharing your ideas successfully. If you have an idea, if you can share it successfully with the proper situation, with using the proper situation, situational factors and of course all the interpersonal skills like listening, speaking and sending a message, non-verbal cues as well as your verbal cues. Of course, your ideas would be shared, accepted and received very well. To build relationships, I think it's the most important part in everybody's life. And when I say relationship, it's not only personal relationships. In corporate life, there are a lot of professional relationships that you're making. Today, corporates have become flat. There are not as many steps, there are not as many promotions that you may be getting as far as your positions are concerned. However, you need to connect professionally very well. You need to have your relationships in place in order to reaching out, in order to getting your promotions, in order to reaching out your ideas, in order to learning a lot of things within corporate and going ahead individually as well as professionally. And of course, the most important is to understand other people, To understand situations, you need to definitely have these interpersonal skills. Most importantly, listening skill. Again and again, because as I said previously, we all need to definitely improve on our listening skills. Now, after talking so much about interpersonal skills, how do we sum it up? Only 3 words. I would say it's kind of a golden rule. Only 3 things that we need to remember: silence, time, and of course space. How do you use all 3 aspects of communication? Silence. I think all of us need to understand when to keep quiet and when not to keep quiet. We've been seeing a lot of advertisements nowadays about raising your voice against something wrong happening on the television. Even on the radio, a lot of these kind of ads are being played. A lot of YouTube videos of these kind of advertisements and this concept are being shared through a lot of media. So that means sometimes you need to be silent and sometimes you should not be silent. I think all 3 things, silence, time and space, we all have been using since our childhood. We know exactly when to keep quiet. You know your mother's or your wife's mood is not really nice, so you would rather keep quiet, keep watching the TV, or you would rather not watch the TV and just keep silent. You know time. Time is a concept that we all have been using since childhood. We want to ask for something from our father. Say we want to ask for money from our father to go to a picnic in our school time. How do you ask for it? First of all, you talk to your mother, ask for some money. She would say, please talk to your father because it's better if you get it from him. Father comes home from his work. You see he is a little tired, probably a little irritated. Silence is the thing that you use here. Next morning, he's all ready, all buttoned up, all shoed up to go to office. He's just stepping out of the house and you, as if you just remember, go to say, oh Papa, I needed some money. And he's in so much of a hurry that's the time you ask for the money and he would say, all right, whatever it is, just take it from mom. We've been using it since our childhood. It's these silence and time are the aspects that we need to utilize in our corporate life. We need to utilize them basically to make ourselves better individuals, better professionals. How do you use it? When do we keep quiet? When do we talk? So in this when and quiet, these 2 aspects are anyways used, anyways understood. Space. When I say space, I think of my cupboard. Well, I would rather not open it because a lot of things might just fall the moment I open my cupboard because I'm not using the space effectively. On my desk at work, what all have I put? Oh, I may have a nice planter there. I may have my child's drawing pinned up on my working desk. I may have something like a mug, the best sister in the world kind of a mug kept there. Oh, it looks very neat. It looks very warm. But how are my files kept? How are they kept? Are they all scattered around? Are they all neatly stacked? Are they all labeled well? So this space, using space. Your space is talking a lot about you. All these 3 aspects definitely do have an important place in your interpersonal skills that you have to use. They all communicate in a different way. When you are quiet, you are communicating something. When you are angry and you are quiet, you are communicating your anger. When you are waiting, there could be pregnant pause, there could be dead silence. Why are these words there? Because there is something called silence which communicates. Time. It's not only reaching on time somewhere which is important, but utilizing the time that you have got. You reach 20 minutes before an interview. What do you do with that time? While away looking around, people coming and going in the reception, just going through all the magazines, glossy magazines kept there? Or do you use it to relax, freshen up yourself, fill up the questionnaire or the paperwork that will follow? Of course, we will be talking about it. Oh, talking about space, this reminds me, how do you sit when you go to an office? Where do you keep your bag? Where do you keep your umbrella if it is monsoon? Where do you keep your papers? How do you keep them? If you need to show one paper out of a stack of 5 papers to your interviewer or to somebody in the meeting, how have you arranged it? Do you find it quickly? Space. Everything that you use, whether it's in your folder, in your bag, around you, how do you sit? Do you lean too much ahead? Do you lean too much behind? Is your bag on your back or is your bag on your lap? How do you handle it? Are you playing with that bag handle continuously? Space. Everything that you use around you is space, and how do you use it? Now this all is very, very important, especially when you want to go for an interview. Because interview is not just a chance to tell about yourself, but it's a chance to sell yourself there. Yes, you are selling yourself there, and that's how we all are salesmen. Let's just specifically talk about some tricks and tips that I can include in this session about some basics of interviews. One very, very important thing I would like to tell you is stress is an unavoidable part of any interview. You are of any age, how much of experience you have gained, whatever kind of a position that you are going for an interview, stress is a part of it, and we all have to handle it. We all have to learn to handle it. What does stress do to us? Oh, stress makes us look very funny a lot of times. We sweat out. A lot of us tremble. A lot of us play with our hands. A lot of us chew our nails. So we got to observe ourselves, what are those nervous habits that we all have or I have, and how can I tackle it? For that we need to observe ourselves. Look at yourself in the mirror, especially when you have stress, especially when you are nervous. What happens to you? Okay, I sweat. Does it look? Do I sweat too much so it will be seen? In that case, you have to understand how will you tackle it. Do I chew my nails? Do I play with my nails? If I do, what will I do so that I can control it? Before you go for an interview, you have to research the company very, very well. Even if you've been partying until 3 a.m. in the morning, you've been sloshed completely. However, if you have an interview at 9 o'clock, you wake up at 7 o'clock, freshen up yourself, look at the company website for one last time, and only then go for the interview. Remember and mention your strengths and your success examples in the interview. Of course, I'll be giving you more specific tricks to handle interview before, after and within. However, these are some common ideas that we all probably miss out on, we all probably shy away from. Do not degrade your past employer ever while you are in an interview. And of course, never ever be dishonest. Don't be casual about any question either. Okay, I don't want to be dishonest, but I don't know what to answer for this particular question. Alright, but don't be casual. Don't avoid a question. Now these are some general tips. Now what do we do before an interview? Like I said, you have to study the company well. Likewise, you have to know your own resume very well. What have I written in this resume? Why have I written this particular point in my resume? Is it still valid about me if I have written it? How does it work to show me a good personality, or how does it help me to be chosen for a particular job? You have to have all these answers ready, because your interviewer is definitely going to point it about. Like a hobby, you've written, my hobby is reading, because of course it sounds very, very positive. And the interviewer is a reader. They will ask you, so who is your most favorite author? And you say, Sidney Sheldon. And the interviewer is reading Sidney Sheldon at that moment. And they start discussing a book, whereas you have not even seen a face of a Sidney Sheldon book. So that's where you're being a dishonest person. That's where you've just written because you want to be flowery and sound good in your resume. So be very, very careful. If you have written something in your resume, study it well. Have a backup for it. Understand the reasoning behind you writing about it. And of course, you have to review your own skills. What skills have I acquired in the last 1 year of my working or of my college days? How can I use them to impress somebody in the interview? Like I said, it's a chance that you sell yourself to the interviewer. And of course, you have to become extremely familiar with the job description and job specification. Very, very clear about it. So that you will be able to reason as to how do you fit for the job and how are you the best fit. Like I said previously, you arrive 15 minutes early, relax, understand, finish all your documentation, paperwork, filling a form or anything like that. What do you do during an interview? Okay, now everything is done, the 15 minutes of early arrival is finished and you're called in the room. You started sweating like anything. You started probably trembling around. You're playing with the papers on your hands. You're playing with your fingers. Remember, you have to tackle with your nervous habits. You have to understand, to learn the interviewer's name while you're meeting him. A lot of interviewers do not have a habit of sharing their names. It's absolutely okay to ask very, very respectfully, very, very politely for their name and try to greet with their name and with a firm handshake. Indians are very bad in doing handshake. Two ladies never shake hands with each other. A lot of ladies, when I spoke with them and I pointed this out to them, they said, oh, we do a better thing, we hug. No, we don't hug an interviewer. If I'm a lady and if I'm interviewing somebody who is a lady, I very, very hardly think of shaking hands. And of course, I will not hug somebody who's come to an interview. So we have to definitely greet each other with a handshake. Lady or a gent, doesn't matter. Before you answer a question, think for 4 seconds. It's absolutely okay to take a pause. Decide what kind of answer you're going to give. Structure your answer very well. Try to avoid the and like is a word that a lot of us use. It's like, I was working for a year there and it was like, how many times are you going to use like, which actually has no place in that particular sentence grammatically. So are these your nervous habits? Observe yourself. If you do not understand a question or a statement by an interviewer, it's absolutely okay to ask, apologize and ask them to repeat. And do not miss out on any question. Answer each and every question that is asked. A lot of times, 2 questions are asked together. So, where were you living 5 years before and why did you shift here? 2 questions in 1 question. Answer each question separately. Say that, oh, to answer your first question, this and this is my answer, and now to answer your second question, this and this is my answer. It looks professional, it comes across as a very confident personality, and most of all, it makes you look like a well listener, a good listener. Now your interview is over, you're very, very happy with the interview. You can see with that non-verbal cues that we spoke about that probably you have got this job, or you are one of them who are shortlisted. You're out of the room. You go home and forget all about the interview. I would suggest it's good before you leave the room to once again shake hands and thank you with a smile. You don't have to be nervous now, your interview is over. Look into that person's eyes, smile, shake your hand and leave the room. Again, you will come across as a very confident person. Once you go back home, write down all the notes that you can think of about the interview. What were the questions that you had to face? Were you able to answer all the questions? Which questions you thought were tricky and you could have given a better answer? Because a lot of times you think of an answers a little later, but now there is no correcting. But of course there are more interviews coming up. Whether you get this job or you don't, there will always be interviews in your life. And of course the best thing is to follow up with a thank you email to the person who's interviewed you if possible. If not, your contact, it could be your recruitment agency or anybody who has called you for the job. I'm sure you will have the email address. It's the best thing to send a thank you email, say that it was a pleasure meeting you if the interviewer has met you. If not, thank you for arranging this interview for me. But please do not ask for any feedback in the same email. Please do not ask. You can ask for the feedback after 2 days that you have after 2 days of attending interviews. So to sum up, what you have to think about is, of course, interpersonal skills. But more than that, how and where am I using them efficiently, effectively, and to make myself one of the best persons, a more developed person every time I use an interpersonal skill. And how am I going to grow professionally? By using them more often and by brushing them more often. Thank you.
What are the elements of interpersonal communication?
Well, I feel like I've also covered in my talk, interpersonal communication skills is one of the most important skill, and elements would be nothing but verbal, of course, non-verbal and para-verbal. All the discussion has been done in the uh, uh, PPT. No, it's not a PPT. No? In the presentation that I gave. So basically non-verbal will be all your body language, gestures, eye contact, facial expressions. Paraverbal will be all about your speech, the pitch of your volume, the way that you are speaking, the tone of your voice, and of course verbal, because the way you speak, the language that you are using, how well do you know that, makes a lot of difference. So I think these three mainly, to sum up, are the elements of interpersonal skills.
Ditto, as she rightly put it across. However, I would always say that how one does the messaging is equally important. Of course, which she covered in her answer just back, that para-verbal, verbal, written, but the message and the content is equally important in terms of what you want to kind of communicate. How you communicate is the cherry onto the cake, essentially. So I go with whatever, all the points that she mentioned.
Absolutely. And as you had covered in your presentation, Mr. Bhatnagar, it was listening, which again is also very important in interpersonal skills.
True.
If you listen well, you'll be able to react well.
Yeah, selective listening not required, essentially. Yeah, that's about it.
What do you think today's generation lacks in terms of interpersonal skills?
I'd like to answer the question. I think I'm very much a Gen X person at this point of time, even at the age of 38. Content is king. That's what as a corporate communication professional and a marketing professional, I always say that content, which I was just mentioning, messaging essentially. Yeah. So I think, from the skills perspective, written skills need to be honed. When I say writing skills, it's not that you need to kind of write flowery language, you need to be grammatically correct, but you need to kind of put the right words in the right perspective. The choice of right words is very important. Like I was mentioning in the presentation, that how can I help you and how may I help you? The entire gamut of activities change. You can help me by taking me to Mount Everest, but can you do that? Yes, you can help me, but you may not help me. So the choice of right words and putting it in the right perspective. So that's number one. Number two, today we communicate a lot. We kind of write emails. We are into a virtual world almost every day. What is that we want to communicate, and from where are we kind of getting that influence? So reading is also very, very important today, because how well read you are will also depend on how well you use the content that you're writing. So there are many jokes which go around, Biharis, how they write their job applications and their matrimonial applications, just to be on the little humorous side. But jokes apart, content is very important. As I had also mentioned earlier, listening is a basic hygiene. I need not kind of tie upon it. If you can't listen, you will never be able to decipher the message. But written communication skills are very, very important. And I think that's somewhere, today's gen, not just today's gen, everybody actually needs to improve upon, or needs to continuously hone. If you have anything to put together.
Well, yes, I do agree. However, I feel today's generation they have their own goals. They are set on a particular ambition as well. However, what they lack is the sight. They do not know how to break that ambition down into goals, and how do you step by step meet your goals, and only then they keep looking at the ambition. They will not really think about the way that they should be in any way, but they want to meet the ambition. And that's what I think should be taken a little more seriously. Yes, of course you do have an ambition, but I think you need to think about the ways to meet. Otherwise you meet depression very early in your life, which is happening with today's generation.
Yes, somewhere down the line you want to kind of win the battle but lose the war. That's how it is. So we are looking for quick fix solutions. That's what we want to do.
Need to have patience when it comes to ambitions.
I always believed in my working career over the last 15 years that Step by step really helps. And each step has to be broken down into a meaningful action and an execution, a milestone. So while everybody is ambitious, so am I. I think I'm overtly ambitious, but my ambition is broken down into smaller milestones, and then those milestones into actionables, those actionables into immediate execution. Those immediate execution plan means that I need to be more well read, and how do I communicate that across, because in a corporate environment, I alone cannot do things. It's my team who does it for me. So what messaging I do to them is equally important. So it's again a part of intercommunication skills. How do you weave the entire team for one common goal?
Yeah.
That is very important.
So what we lack today, even we, because we are young enough, is I want to buy the Ferrari first and then I want to learn the driving. That's what probably is what I'm doing, which we must avoid.
Which interpersonal skills from your perspective is or are more important?
Listening and patience.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And of course non-verbal communication. Eye contact, because if you're not looking at somebody while you are talking, you're not talking, you're not communicating. So I think it's just a short and sweet answer.
Second that.
For a change.
How does one develop his interpersonal communication skills?
It's a very academic question, frankly, because developing interpersonal skills is not an overnight process. I think the first step in this process is to observe yourself. Like I also said in my presentation, do you have any nervous habits? Observe yourself. If yes, what are those? What is everything doing to you? What do you do in every situation? Is it correct? It is not correct. If it's not correct, change it. What needs to be changed? Ask your colleagues, ask your family, and trust if they're telling you something. If somebody tells me that you're too fat, I must trust it, I must believe it, I must look at the dress size that I wear, believe it and work towards it. So I think I must understand what is it first, do I lack, do I have, and then work on it. I think that's it, because otherwise it will take forever to understand the answer to this question.
I wish there was a prescription for it. You go to somebody, an expert, and he says, and he or she prescribes, hey, you got to do this before breakfast, after breakfast. But there is no recipe / prescription to it. I would say no one is perfect. I can give my own example. Till my class 10th, I was scared of speaking or conversing in English. The reason being, what if I speak wrong words? What if this is not right? But then, yes, you need somebody to guide you, somebody to handhold you. And I think as senior folks, as mentors and as supervisors in day-to-day working, maybe as parents also, both of us are parents, in the sense she has a daughter, I have two growing up sons, we need to kind of do a role reversal. Rather than from being a teacher or a dictator, we said, hey, I'm your friend. So, start being a friend and maybe handhold the person who needs that. And as she rightly pointed out, it has to be, whatever shortcomings are there, that has to be pointed out. But how do you make that effective? As you're going to say, hey, listen, you're doing well, buddy, a little bit much of efforts and you'll be there. Rather than saying, hey, this is all bullshit. Come on, let's start from zero. That demotivates and demoralizes the person who's wanting to learn more. So there is no recipe. You have to learn, you have to unlearn, you have to go through the grind. I would say, I used to be an orator during my school days. So I used to prepare my speeches standing in front of the mirror and observing myself. How my body language is, because effective communication also means body language. Now if I sit like this and I talk to you, yeah, you could do this way, yeah, and rather than I'm saying, I'm trying to make a point, I'm not trying to affirm something. So observe yourself, even your style, sense of dressing. I always say, money doesn't buy you class. You need not buy expensive clothes to look classy, but how you carry them is most important. How comfortable you are in them. Don't wear anything, because body language is also part of effective communication. No. Don't wear anything which you're not comfortable with. If you want to be a part, if you want to be seen, I want to be a Me Too product. Don't be that. Create your own identity. Hey, listen, I'm comfortable this way. I'm comfortable this way. Now it is my best thing how I would carry it. No, because it's a formal outfit. Oh, look at that guy, he looks so fine. I'm going to go and spend 15 grand on buying a Zara suit, but I'm not comfortable. Be yourself. Now it is my best thing how I would carry it across. No, because it's a formal outfit. Oh, look at that guy, he looks so fine. I'm going to go and spend 15 grand on buying a Zara suit, but I'm not comfortable. Be yourself. Be yourself. evaluate, know what your shortcomings are. Nobody is perfect in this world. So, but yes, you need to find a mentor who can perhaps at work, at home, in your social circle, whom you feel that, yeah, that person can be trusted enough to groom you. Go ahead and do that. Open up. Don't be shy. Speak wrong. Because if you don't speak wrong, how will you know what is right?
Absolutely.
So that's I think one can develop, and it's an ongoing process, never-ending process. That's about from my end.
Yeah.
How does one prepare before an interview?
I think I've answered this in my presentation. There were very clear tips that I had given before interview. First of all, first and the foremost, 2 points. One is to study the company very well. What is the company about? To whom you are going to meet? Know your own resume very well. What is it that you have written and why have you written that in your resume? Have a reasoning very, very clear in your mind so that you can answer. Like I had given the example, I'll repeat the example here too, that if you've written your hobby as reading, then be prepared to answer all the questions about reading. You need to really have all the reasonings. Why have you written something in your resume? Study all the job specification, job description, absolutely clear. You need to understand what is the job exactly so that you can ask more questions about it. Be fresh and be relaxed. Understand your nervous habits, learn to tackle them. I guess that's it from my side.
From me, she rightly pointed out one thing which is my favorite, which I typically do in interviews. When people write, I ask them, okay, describe yourself. I am quite innovative. So when you assign adjectives to your own profile, kindly be ready to kind of say what is that innovation or what is that innovative thing that you've done which has brought you to this level. They say, I'm a team player. Then I would say, okay, fine, give me an example of how you being a team player helped you, the team and the organization. I think one thing which I have done wrong also in my other earlier interviews, that which you rightly pointed out, ma'am, was know your resume well. You go on to Google or you go on to Microsoft Word, you will have many resume writers over there.
Yes.
You keep on getting calls from these variety portals who would say, hey, we'll help you put up a very good CV, which will get you the hits and the, which will make it much more noticeable. But nobody knows you better than yourself. So know it first. Very important thing, whilst you want to know about the company, the role and all that, also do a check on whom you're meeting.
Absolutely.
Okay. Today, social media gives you access to all of that. It's always better. So, while I should have done it before I came over here, I should have checked, Dr. Manoranjan's profile, or I should have checked your profile. Of course, I didn't know that this lady would be here, but I normally do that. Okay, whom am I meeting? So, at least it gives you a background, because what happens is that it helps the candidate break the ice with the interview. And it makes him or her less intimidated about the person or the person who's going to interview. Because my last interview I attended, I of course did a thorough check on the interviewer, and I started a chord from, when the discussion started, pleasantries were exchanged. I started off with something which made him very comfortable, and it actually did my job. And if not, whether you get the job or not, but the entire half an hour to an hour discussion was more healthy, was very productive. You exchanged good notes, you parted ways on a very good note. And you perhaps still continue that professional relationship with that interviewer. So for me, that's the key thing.
Of course, I think a valid point, because you can find something which you can connect with that person. It could be that your ex-school, it could be from the same college that you've studied, or somebody you know, or your sister from the same college. It could be anything that will make you comfortable in a situation to meet with that person. Oh, alright, I know this person because he's from the same college. So, I somewhere myself feel less nervous maybe from the candidate's point of view.
True.
Is it alright to ask questions to the interviewer?
At an appropriate time, yes. Opportune, it has to be opportune. Don't jump. Don't show enthusiasm to ask the question. Because please understand, the person who's interviewing you is also definitely knows a little bit more about what the business is. And since he's interviewing you, or she's interviewing you, he or she might be your next boss. Okay, so I'm not saying that You have to be very subdued, you have to be a little lamb in front of the tiger or the tigress, but it has to be done at an opportune time when you are invited to ask any question. Also, I would want to say, ask the relevant questions. If you ask, okay, so do you have a 5-day week? Or what is the holiday policy? I'm just giving examples. Okay. Achha, what is the grooming norm over here? These are irrelevant questions because it also depends, you can make out from when you enter the office, how the office environment is, you can make these things out. That can be asked at a later date when you are about to join or whatever it is. But these have to be appropriate, which are detrimental to the role that you're being interviewed for. So, yes, it's fair and right to ask questions, but at the right time.
Yeah, like he says, content is very important. So what are you asking? When are you asking? And why are you asking? Because by asking the questions, the examples that he gave, it's like you are assuming that you've got the job.
Yeah.
So it's being overconfident there. That okay, I'm going to get a job, now let me know the holiday policy. I mean, is it relevant there right now? No. But I think at the same time, it's good to ask questions about company, plans of their growth, about their probably recruitment plans, so that you would be able to refer some people who you think are fitting in the particular job. A lot of times that happens. Of course, that depends on what level of the position you are going for. But I do advise people about asking for what are the expansion plans. Automatically it will come out what are the kind of people they are looking for. So it would be really nice to ask a couple of questions and not just accept whatever they are asking you and go back. But please do not ask about salary immediately. Otherwise, it is the first question a lot of times. So what is the salary range?
Yeah, true. But I think that only is restricted to a certain cadre of interviewers.
Yeah, that's fine. What position are you getting interviewed for? It makes a lot of difference.
One thing which I want to kind of highlight, I don't know, is grooming. Very, very, very important. Punctuality. Typically in monsoon-prone cities, you always blame it on the rain. Whilst even in the season of monsoons, please be well prepared. Don't blame it on local trains being late. Don't blame it on flooding. If it is happening, please pre-inform. Don't assume that the interviewer would assume that it is raining, so assumingly you're going to be late. Sometimes, at least to me as an individual, as a professional, it puts me off if somebody doesn't turn up on time and if I'm not informed about it. And being appropriately dressed for the interview. Because 20%, at least this is for me, 20% of times, see in retail there's a concept called twilight zone in retail. Yes. What it means is that from the minute or from the spot you enter the store, from there to a distance of 5 feet, customers typically make up their mind whether they want to go beyond browsing or not. It's called the twilight zone. For me, that is the twilight zone. The minute the candidate knocks the door of my cabin, the grooming, the way he or she presents herself or himself, I think 20% goes over there itself. If he or she is not appropriately dressed or is late but not informed, I'm switched off. Sorry for being harsh, but that's the reality. And that's a corporate reality today. So you have to show respect for the other person's time and your time.
Absolutely.
So that's what I want to make.
Also, since we're making some extra points, one point just popped in my mind is when I was speaking about nervous habits especially. Now you may not be nervous about an interview, but a lot of times when you meet the interviewer, you suddenly tend to get a bit nervous because probably the interviewer is extremely beautiful or extremely ugly. It definitely puts a kind of a gap between you and them. You are suddenly intimidated by the look and the feel of that person. Sometimes it could be just the personality of the interviewer. It could be very tall and hefty, or somebody who's extremely thin and lean on the personality. A lot of times these kind of shocks make you nervous. You're not expecting a foreigner who's going to take an interview. You do not expect a particular accent that you might not understand very easily. So these are the things that definitely make a lot of difference in the interpersonal skills during interview. And they play a lot of role in either you're being nervous or you're distracted. Like he mentioned, Mr. Patnagar mentioned in his presentation about distractions. These are some points that you have to be prepared for. Shocks. Probably.
These are pleasant distractions. Nobody's going to mind that actually.
Thank you, Mr. Mudit. Thank you, Mrs. Archana. So, it's a time for the vote of thanks. So, I hope you all people have enjoyed a lot of discussions on the interpersonal skill and the interview skills. I learned a lot, even though we were into this field, understanding each other and how the communication plays an important role. So, it's my privilege to propose the vote of thanks to Mr. Mudit Bhatnagar, its Cashcard, and Mrs. Archana from the academia for their valuable discussions on interpersonal skills and interview skills. I express my sincere thanks to the organizer of this event, media partners and the faculty involved and the audience for their valuable time and their presence, and those who put questions for the valuable interactions. I express my special thanks to all of them. It was a wonderful event in which we had discussions of the corporate and academia view about the interpersonal and interview skills. I hope it must have benefited the majority students who will be in the process of applying and approaching for their progress in their career. So, with a warm thank you note and with a warm wishes to all present over here and a best wishes to all and sincere thanks to our guest, I, Dr. Manoranjan P. Ram, sign off. Thank you.